Okay, so I want to talk about this narrative, this ideology that Eidos originate. Eidos's lineage is ancient Americans. Our lineage is not ancient Americans. There are two main reasons for why people are pushing this narrative. One is people don't want to accept that our ancestors were enslaved out of ego and trauma. It's hard for us to accept that we were enslaved, especially from male egos. There's this male ego going on, where we don't want to accept that we were under control, that we were dominated, that we were conquered by this other population that's seemingly in power, and that we have this friction with, this history with. Well, it happened. Uh, that's just something that we have to accept, and that doesn't have to reflect negatively on our personhood. I'm actually surprised by such a large aversion that some ADOS have, since so many ADOS are Christians. Okay, their slavery is a big narrative in the Bible, and it wasn't this immensely negative connotation. There were spiritual reasons behind that, and it's the same with chattel enslavement. And then human populations have been enslaved throughout history. Depending on the conditions and circumstances, it can just happen. And I believe personally that there were spiritual or type of reasons that went down, and then it's just human reasons. That just is what happened. Another big reason for people holding onto this narrative is because a lot of ADOS feel rejected in this country. They feel negated, voided in this country as if we don't belong. So people feel rootless here. And I don't have to hold onto that narrative to feel rooted and valid in this country, because we already have roots in this country because we've been here for over 400 years. I don't have to hold on to that narrative because I already have an inheritance in this country from the labor that my ancestors contributed in building and sustaining this country. I am I am a native indigenous earthling. Um, so that trumps everything in the beginning. Humans migrate, they travel, and they settle. That's what Gaians do. This is Gaia. I'm an indigenous Gaian. That's what Gaians do. So even regardless, but on top of that, we have deep roots in this continent, in this land, in this place. So I don't have to hold on to a narrative to be valid here. Another thing is the logic and the reasoning behind justifying that we originate from ancient Americans. It's usually just a weak logic. One thing is, like, you'll see people post pictures as proof, and it's just dark skinned American Indians. Okay, dark skin, bold features, that does not equate Africa. Like, You can see our Chinese, our Asian people, Europeans, are they white identified people because they have pale skin? Like, why does that logic only apply to Africans? We want to claim ancient Australians as black because they're dark. We want to claim anyone dark or with bold features we call African. So is everyone with pale features white identified? We can recognize that they're different populations. So that logic doesn't even make sense. And then for there's genetic evidence that we don't descend from ancient Americans. Our genes correlate, match closely with ancient people who originate from ancient Africans. Um, People believe paternity testing. It's the same science, it's the same tools. So why do people have faith, this belief in paternity testing, but not genetic testing for when it comes to ancestry? They've found bones and genetic material um, from older populations here, and they match with Siberian or ancient American populations. Everything else is just these stories based on superficial classifications of dark skin and bold features. Like, we do not need to hold onto this narrative. First of all, we're negating the lineages and the histories of American Indians, and we're disregarding and negating the history of our ancestors by disregarding them for the sake of this ancient American origin narrative. I would suggest that people just read history. In school, we just basically know about slavery that's talked about for 5 minutes and then we move on. When we look at the history books and do our research, we will find that we have deep histories here, that we have deep roots here, that we have rich histories from our distant ancestors in Africa. Um, I made videos of my family tree because I wanted to show other Ados that we have roots here. I showed that my ancestors fought in almost every major world war in in the U.S. Um, we need to update schools so we know that we are belong here and we know that we're valid here, and we need to recognize our humanity, that we're earthlings, that we're Gaians, and that everyone's an indigenous earthling, everyone's an indigenous Gaian. We're all basically cousins. Okay, everyone's related. That's what we are. We're Gaians. Gaians travel. Gaians migrate. There's always been slavery. There's always been warfare. There's always been power struggles, and we can just focus on evolving as a population and honoring our histories.